Today we're really happy to have Jenny Morin with us. She is the author of a new fantastic book, Get Organized Quick, 15 minutes a day to organize your life. Jenny, so good to see you.
Thank you, MariJo. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we invited Jenny here to talk a little bit about her business that she does. She's in the area of organization. Who out there doesn't need that? And we also wanted to find out more about her book. So Jenny, share a little bit about your business. I know you've been in business for a good 10 years or so. Tell us a little about it.
Yes. Yeah, we're going on, actually, it'll be 13 years
Wow.
pretty quick here. I have been in NAPO, which is the National Organization Association of Professional Organizers, since 2008, and it's been a huge boon to my business, teaching me how to run a business and more about how to be a better organizer so I can help more people. And I help homeowners and I help offices. I also speak, and I'm a time management coach because I discovered along the way that people that aren't organized need not only physical organization, like getting rid of their clutter, but they need help managing their time so that they have time to organize. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book, because if these are small 15-minute projects, anybody can fit a 15-minute project into their day. And since I know people are short on time, I wanted to make it easy for people to get organized. And that's why what gave me the idea for this book. Also, my husband too, he is an author. He has written about a dozen fantasy books, and
Wow.
he inspired me to want to write a book.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point because I am known to be a little bit disorganized from time to time. And it can be really overwhelming. So the idea that you can tackle it in small chunks rather
Mm-hmm.
than, I think of it walking into a room that's just completely cluttered, that seems so overwhelming. However, if
Yes.
there are techniques, which we'll talk about, and I read the book, so I know that there are fantastic techniques. I've even started with some of them. It really does make it something that you can do rather than like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get all that done. Tell us
Right.
about a typical client that you have.
I work with all different ages. Most of the time, I'm working with retired people who are looking to downsize or get rid of the clutter that they have in their home to make it a more presentable, more peaceful place to live. They definitely are some of my favorite clients to work with. They're a lot of fun.
Hmm.
But I am very proud of the clients that I've helped, especially the single moms. There's one in particular I can think of where we did her entire house and she just got it. Sometimes you have a client that just really runs with it and they get into it and they do all kinds of projects in between our organizing sessions. And that's what happened with her. She was so happy. And, her life had been so chaotic before we started. There was clutter everywhere, filth, the walls were dirty, but she started to take pride in her home. And at the end, after we finished her entire house, she had a party for her friends to show it off.
That
And that's just so rewarding for me, when that kind of situation happens. I love
right.
it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And you bring up something interesting, and actually, and I thought about this even when I was reading the book. And again, get organized. Let's see the book again so we remember. Get
Oh, sure,
organized.
sure, sure. Here
Get
it
organized. Quick,
is.
15 minutes a day. So
Yeah.
just thinking about this woman that you were able to help, it's one thing to think about all of these different systems you can put in place. How about keeping them long term? What do you
Oh.
see as far as great tips to ensure that we don't fall off the wagon, we keep it going? If you were to go back to
Mhm.
this lady's house a year from now, is she still going to have her space nice and organized?
I hope so, because she really did understand the process. And that's a very good question. I don't usually go back unless they have another project in another area of the house.
Sure.
So the two things there are that are very important is in order to keep the clutter away is you have to be ruthless with your clutter, but not reckless with your clutter. Okay. And
yeah.
Clarify that.
Yeah.
Ruthless means you purge ruthlessly,
Yes.
but you're not reckless. You don't throw away a whole box of things or papers or magazines or mail unless you have actually looked at it. You have to quickly look at the things in there. I had one client who was a hoarder. I don't work with hoarders anymore, but he had a book of stuff that looked like just old magazines and trash. He wanted to throw it away, but I insisted that we go through it. And we found a check for $350 in there from his grandmother.
Right.
So that's what I mean about not being reckless.
Not being reckless. Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah, I can think of a time that my husband and I were doing some organization, and we did throw out some things that we did regret, and maybe it was probably we didn't take the time to go through them a little bit more. Some of the things that I thought were really interesting that you mentioned in your book is that it is cathartic and you encourage listening to music. That's tell us a little bit about how that works.
Right. Let me finish the second part of that other question though. To keep it organized, the other key is maintenance. Just maintaining it and figure out, are you going to do your maintenance once a week? Are you going to do it every day on a certain area that's a clutter prone area? That's really the key to keeping the systems that you set up.
Sure.
So about your question, can you ask that again? Sorry.
Oh, just one of the things you mentioned about keeping things fun, cathartic, listening to music.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I definitely recommend, especially if you're not with a professional organizer, if you're a DIYer,
yes,
definitely get some music on. If music is your jive, something that motivates you, or get some light on in the room, open some windows, get some energy flowing. Whatever you do, get a friend. If you're a people person, have a friend come and just talk to you while you do it. Maybe if you're trying on outfits to see if they look good on you, that's a perfect time to invite a girlfriend or a sister over to help you out. And that makes it so much more fun.
And maybe they'll even jump in and help. You could,
maybe that would be a great benefit.
Bait them over by telling, really, you just have to sit there. You don't have to do anything, but hopefully they'll decide they want to help. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they will, and either way, it's helping because it's motivating you and it's making the project go faster for you. Yeah.
And speaking of motivation too, one of the other things you mentioned is working with your own rhythm. When that's something else that jumped out at me from your book.
Definitely. Oh, you mean you're picking the best time of day to do a project, that kind of thing? Absolutely. This is something I learned from another organizer. She is very, very good, and she taught me as we were doing the time coaching training, I learned that you definitely need to do certain things, the mental things, the mind, the focus work, the stuff that is hard for you, that kind of thing you need to do at the right time of day. You can't try to do it when you're feeling sluggish. Yes. So for me, that's early in the morning or morning. For other people, they might fully wake up and be ready to tackle a big project in the afternoon instead, or maybe even the evening. So going with your energy is very important, especially when you're doing something that's hard for you or that it takes a lot of mind work. Yeah,
I love that tip. I have to say my favorite tip that you had in there was the family tour. And the reason I thought that was such a great tip is you can have all of especially if you're living with other people, you can implement all of the processes and organizational systems in place, but if everyone's not on board, then what's going to happen? And I think about people in a household saying, well, ask mom where it is or ask dad where it is, and nothing ever gets put away in the right place. So tell us a little bit about how that came about with the family tour.
Right. It's something I highly recommend if there's more than one person in the household, and there usually is. So I believe I talked about this in the kitchen chapter, because kitchens have so many different tools. appliances and ingredients and all that.
Yes.
So many different moving parts, right? So once you get your kitchen in place, you get everything organized, and you've moved things around, so your family is going to be confused. They might keep putting things away. Hopefully they put things away. They might be putting things away in the wrong spot. But if you label everything, especially the pantry,
sure.
If you label things and then give them a tour of where the new homes for everything are, they're going to know where stuff is. And hopefully that will eliminate that, oh, well, ask mom where to put this. I don't know where to put this.
Right.
Or like when you ask them to put groceries away, you're there having to tell them where everything goes, which is annoying, right? And that wastes our time too. Right. We have better things to do than to tell people this is where the butter goes now, or no, this is where the cinnamon goes now, or whatever. Right. So yeah.
And I mean, if there's little kids or grandkids around, it's really fun too to have them be part of the overall process, because you're taking them on a tour of their own home or their grandma's home, but at least they understand where it is, and they become a little bit more likely to keep it up when you include them versus just yelling at them for not putting things back the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Make them part of it. In fact, in my book, I have a picture of my daughter organizing or cleaning out my pantry.
Yes, I saw that.
Because so I do involve my family, and you got to just play to everybody's strengths, and that's really important.
Yeah, that's really important too, because you may have a little organizer amongst you, and in your case, like you said, your daughter that's something that she's really good at as well. So
for sure.
One of the other things, and I know we have in our household a little, I don't even know, some square footage dedicated to a little junk pile that drives me nuts all the time. But you said have a command center. So in our little junk pile, you can find anything from an emery board to a screwdriver. It's very random. And how do we make sure that doesn't happen? And actually, there's two parts of that question. And does that have to do with your command center at all?
Okay, is it the place where you usually pay the bills, or where is that pile?
It's in our kitchen. It's just on one of our, we've got a decent amount of counter space, but it's in a little small corner of our counter space, and the mail comes in, and whatever.
Is that where the mail goes? Mail goes there.
We pretty much go through that pretty quickly, but whatever's left over stays there. And I'm not kidding you; it could be just anything else that we kind of haven't really figured out what to do with. And
without seeing it, it's hard for me to say, but it does. If that's where you put the mail, that's where I would say is most likely your command center. And in order to get that organized, you've got to figure out a system for the mail that you're not. Obviously, you probably have a system for your bills.
Yeah.
So what to do with the rest of the mail, or things that you have to keep. The system is just deciding where these things are going to go. They just need a home. Yeah. And that's basically one of the main things that I do is I help people purge, and I help people decide, and I help people find homes for their stuff and set up those systems for them. So the system would have to be something that accommodates all of the things that usually get put on that piece of counter or that desk. And some of it's, I always tell people, look on the walls, look on the side of the cabinets, possibly, or the wall. Is there anything that can stand up? Those kind of things, those kind of tricks help free up the space, the flat space that you need to use when you do bills, or when you need to write something on your calendar, or chart a place, so you'll have a place to charge your phone or whatever. Yeah. That helps.
Yeah, that is. We'll have to work on it. It's probably just a little bit better as deciding what to do with it and putting it away.
Yeah, that's probably the main part, is decision.
Is figuring it out. And then the other thing are closets. That's a big deal. And you had a good example in your book and a nice picture, but sometimes closets aren't so big either. And you're dealing with a small space and a lot of clothes that people don't want to part with. What's your approach when you have a customer who has smaller space, but a lot of stuff?
Okay, well, obviously we're going to purge. We're going to purge. We're going to see what is necessary for them to keep, what they're very much attached to, or what they use all the time. So I always ask them, do you actually use this? Do you actually wear this? And do you love it? like, if you got rid of this, would you cry? Or something like
I'll
that.
start. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so we would purge. And the other option for a very small closet and is, not to get rid of all your clothes, but you can put away your seasonal clothes.
Sure.
So that's what I used to do when I had a small closet. I would put my winter clothes with my sweaters, long skirts, and that kind of thing away in like 2 boxes, and then switch it out in the spring, switch them back and forth between the warm weather and the cold weather clothes.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's an option too.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to do when I
Right.
had a small closet.
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
would imagine you put something on the calendar and you're committed to it. This is my date to switch out my clothing. That works. But you do bring
yeah.
up another really good point. I mean, you're dealing with people and emotions attached to some of their things, and that must be really challenging at times for you to deal with.
It can be very stressful and difficult for the client. I make it easier for them. I try to ease that
Sure.
by either making, I don't make light of it, but I do ask them questions that help them get to the point where they realize that either they're not going to use it again, or either they're not going to use it again, or yes, they're going to keep it. But I do find that the faster they make a decision, if they say, oh, yes, I love this dress, that's a definite yes.
Yeah.
The longer they think about it, that's them trying to rationalize keeping it
Yeah.
or justify keeping it.
Right.
So that's one thing I've observed. But yeah, definitely try to ease that journey. And I don't ever make somebody get rid of something.
Absolutely.
I strongly encourage, but I don't make somebody get rid of something when I work with them.
And that's probably really important, because a lot of this is so tied up, whether it's clothing or dishes or anything else in a household. A lot of it is tied up to emotions, and sometimes you don't know what it is that's really behind what they're supposed to be getting rid of, and it's, you don't want them to regret that down the road.
Exactly. And yeah, I don't want anybody to regret that. That's why I do encourage them to be not to be reckless. And especially with things like family heirlooms, photos or documents, family documents, we definitely want to hold on to those for records. But let's put them in a safe place. Let's not put them in a magnetic photo album. Let's get them in a safe place, and without acid, an acid-free environment, acid-free box or binder or something easy, so that it makes it easy for them. And when they find more things, they can just put it in there. They have a home for those items now. So
fantastic. Yeah. Last question, and before we wrap things up, what are 2 tips? Now, let's say someone is listening here today, or they read your book, or they've heard you somewhere else, and there are 2 tips that you're suggesting these are a must do to keep our lives organized. What would those 2 tips be?
Okay. Yeah. I would say number 1, this is in my book, make a decision on that item as you are holding it. You're looking at it, you need to decide on it right there. Because if you set it aside and say, oh, I'm going to decide on this later, that's the easy out, and you may never get back to it, honestly. So make that decision. You need to actually just do it. Just decide on it. And yeah, like you and your husband, I would say, if there were things that are precious to you but that you don't use anymore, you may have to have allow yourself like one little spot for that kind of thing to think about overnight, but then to decide the next day, or whenever, the next Saturday, with the next day you've planned to work on that project, right? So the other thing is really important to have a system or a home for everything. Okay, because that's why clutter piles up. Besides having too much stuff, it's just not having a home for those certain things. Maybe you need a home for your cables, for your phone, your extra cables. Maybe you need a home for, I don't know, the bread that's always sitting out on the counter that's, going stale. Maybe you need a home. There's all kinds of things you need a home for. Mail, bills, or things like invitations. Where do you put invitations? You need to hold on to them, or how do you deal with that? So these kind of homes that you establish are going to help you banish that clutter, because you're going to have a place to put those things instead of flat on your desk or cluttering up your counter or your, your tabletop or whatever, the floor, so that's one really good way
And I love
to
that.
eliminate.
Yeah, and I love and thinking of the all of our chargers and everything. They're always just plugged in, and we have our daughter home
Right.
with us right now. So now it's, instead of just the two of us, it's three of our things all plugged in all over the place. But that is true. If we had them
Mm.
pulled out, put away, at least you don't see that mess when you walk in a room.
Yeah, that's great.
Jenny, congratulations on the book. It is a great read, and
Thank you.
I enjoyed reading it. I'm enjoying the tips. So
Wonderful.
yes, and I appreciate you being here to share a little bit more about some of the things that you encourage your clients to do.
Thank you so much. Let me just tell everybody where they can find my book. It's available on Amazon. And the name of my website, if you're interested to look at that and join my newsletter list, it's www.efficientspaces.org. So I hope you guys benefit from those tips.
Fantastic. Good. Well, thank you, Jenny. And thank you, everyone, for checking us out today.
Thanks, MariJo.